Okay, welcome to this presentation for the Tayside and Fife Archaeological Committee Conference. My name's Magnus Kirby. I'm a project officer with CFA Archaeology, and I'm going to be talking about a fairly extensive prehistoric settlement which was excavated at Loak Farm in the spring of 2019 in advance of work associated with the duelling of the A9. The location of the site was just off the old A9 to the south of Bankfoot. It was situated on the edge of lowland Perthshire, just to the south of the Highland boundary line, on particularly fertile ground within the lower catchment area of the River Tay. And it lay within close proximity to the Audie Burn, so there was a plentiful supply of fresh water. The area was going to be used as a borrow pit, so the substratum was very free draining sands and gravels. And there were panoramic views of the surrounding countryside, which seems to be a feature that attracted prehistoric settlement. Its suitability for prehistoric settlement is reflected in the numerous sites within the surrounding area. So you've got the Loak Standing Stone and Court Hill Barrow within the immediate area. And in the wider area, you've got the Newmill Souterrain excavated by Trevor Watkins in the 1970s. There was also a settlement associated with the Souterrain, which had a roundhouse and a number of other features, including what have been interpreted as fence lines. And then you've got the more recent work carried out by AOC for the A9 duelling. This produced evidence of much earlier Neolithic settlement on the opposite side of the road to the Souterrain. And there are also features identified within the vicinity of the crop mark sites of Ladner unenclosed settlement and the Marls Hall enclosure and Souterrain. The site at Loak Farm was initially identified as crop marks from aerial photographs, which indicated that there were a couple of pit alignments within the borrow pit area. This was subject to a monitored topsoil strip. The depth of the topsoil was 30 to 50 centimetres, which suggests that plough truncation is likely to be a factor. But despite this, the following features were identified. And these were 8 four-post structures, 2 six-post structures, 7 roundhouses, 2 ring ditches, 1 oval post-built structure, another lightweight post-built structure, a post and trench structure, and numerous isolated pits and groups of pits. Interestingly, not all these features were identified immediately because some of them were only visible with exactly the right moisture content. So you could go out onto the site one day and they'd all be clearly visible. But if you didn't mark them out immediately, they may have all disappeared a few hours later, only to reappear again when conditions were just right. This slide shows roundhouses 1 and 2. Roundhouse 1 consisted of a single post ring measuring 10.8 by 8.4 metres. There were 12 posts and also 4 larger pits, which may have been an entrance structure in the southeast side. And the post holes were 22 to 70 centimetres in diameter and a maximum of 25 centimetres deep. The Roundhouse 2 consists of a partial post ring measuring 6.4 metres diameter, and there were 7 posts. And these posts were 26 to 45 centimetres in diameter and a maximum of 20 centimetres deep. There's been some debate as to whether these single post rings represent the full extent of the structure, or if there would have been an outer ring groove. In examples where a ring groove had been identified, the inner post ring generally accounted for 60 to 67% of the overall diameter, and with the outer ring adding an additional 33 to 40%. This would have potentially given Roundhouse 1 a diameter of up to 18 metres. So given that the data on roundhouses suggests that they have an average diameter of 8 metres and that they seldom exceed 15 metres, adding an external ring groove would have made this something unusual in terms of its size. These are roundhouses 3 and 4. Again, they consist of a single post ring. Roundhouse 3 had a diameter of 8.4 metres and there were 13 post holes. The post holes typically measured 40 centimetres diameter by 15 centimetres deep. And there was a shallow ring ditch just on the inside of the post ring. Roundhouse 4 had a diameter of 8 metres. There was a partial post ring of 9 post holes. The post holes were up to 70 centimetres diameter and 21 centimetres deep. And there was a possible entrance structure in the southeast side, and a saddle quern was recovered from the interior. Adding an additional 40% to the diameter of these two roundhouses would give them a potential diameter of 13 to 14 metres, placing them towards the top end of the normal size range and well above the average size of 8 metres. But there are potential problems in interpreting these as unusually large roundhouses. None of the post holes seemed particularly substantial, so it's debatable if the post rings would have had the structural integrity to support a larger structure. And even going by a diameter indicated by the post ring, additional reinforcing may have been required, possibly in the form of horizontal interwoven sticks like a basket, or even by stacking turf against it. This is Roundhouse 5. It was the only example on site where there was a clear evidence of both an internal post ring and an external ring groove. The post ring had a diameter of 6.5 metres and the ring groove had a diameter of 10 metres, giving it a ratio of 65% internal to 35% external. The post ring consisted of 8 post holes. These were generally more substantial than those for roundhouses 1 to 4, all measuring over 50 centimetres in diameter. And there was a line of 3 internal post holes thought to make up a structural element of the roundhouse. The general impression from this was that it was a more substantially built structure than roundhouses 1 to 4. This perhaps reflects the fact that it was clearly designed to support a roof of a larger diameter than the post ring. The impression that this was a better built structure was reinforced by what appears to be an elaborate entrance structure on the southeastern edge, consisting of post holes and linear pits. This is Roundhouse 6. This was by some way the most substantially built roundhouse excavated. It had a post ring with a diameter of 11.2 metres. There were 10 substantial post holes in the post ring, all very evenly spaced at 2 metres apart, and 1 central post hole. The post holes were up to 81 by 111 centimetres across and up to 48 centimetres deep. And there was clear evidence of packing stones. Prehistoric pottery was recovered at one of the post holes, and there was a possible entrance structure on the southeast side. Adding a ring groove to this would potentially make it one of the largest roundhouses excavated in Scotland, possibly give it a diameter in excess of 18 metres. A few larger roundhouses with diameter in excess of 19 metres have been recorded, notably at Loak Farm near Inverness. But a number of very large double-ring roundhouses are now being reinterpreted as a single post ring with an external stockade. So, for example, a 90-metre diameter roundhouse at Scott's Darvet is now thought to be near to 30 metres diameter. And the 17.6 metre diameter roundhouse at the nearby Newmill site may be as little as 6.6 metres diameter. There have also been some very large single post ring structures excavated, with a diameter of 40 metres being recorded at Bankfoot near Glen Eagles. But the excavator did note that he thought that this was the full extent of the structure. So on the balance of probability, it's thought that the recorded diameter for Roundhouse 6, as well as Roundhouses 1 to 4, does indeed represent the full extent of these structures. This is Roundhouse 7 and what appears to have been two associated four-post structures. Roundhouse 7 appears to have been fairly small, consisting of a single post ring with a diameter of 5.6 metres. There were 8 post holes. The post holes were up to 50 by 63 centimetres and 27 centimetres deep. And there was a possible entrance structure, this time on the southern side. The four posters pretty much mirror each other on either side of the roundhouse entrance. They measured around 3 by 3 and 3.5 by 4 metres. A post hole on one of these four posters showed clear evidence of having been recut, and the elongated nature of a number of the other post holes would perhaps suggest that posts were being replaced. And this would perhaps indicate that they remained in use over a considerable period of time. These four posters are normally interpreted as raised granaries, although it has to be said that the limited surviving remains make any realistic interpretation very difficult. Reconstructions at places such as Butser Farm generally envisage them as small conical roofed buildings set on low pillars. And it's thought that each of the wooden pillars would have been topped either with a wider flat wooden disc or a flattish and preferably slippery stone, in order to prevent vermin such as mice and rats climbing up and gaining access to the stored grain. This structure was located close to the largest roundhouse, which was Roundhouse 6, so it's possibly associated. It's possibly a variation on the four-post structures, but much more substantially built. It measured 3.5 by 3.1 metres, so around the same size as the four-post structures. It had 4 very large post holes linked along 2 sides by possible post trenches. The largest post hole was up to 90 by 120 centimetres. It had additional single post holes placed opposite 3 sides at approximately the midpoint, and twin post holes opposite the midpoint on the 4th side. And the fills were charcoal rich, suggesting in situ burning. Like the conventional interpretation of the four-post structures, it may have been to support a raised platform or structure. The additional post holes opposite the four sides at the midpoint might indicate that the platform overhung the main structure by a considerable amount, and additional support was required. And it may have been designed like this, or they may have been added after the platform had started to sag. This was an oval post-built structure, possibly a variation on the roundhouse. It measured 6.8 by 4.4 metres. A large central post hole possibly suggests a conical roof. There were a number of additional post holes along the northern edge, possibly suggesting that rotting post holes were being replaced. The post holes generally appear to be fairly small. They were no more than 40 centimetres diameter. So once any packing was taken into consideration, the posts are likely to have been fairly lightweight. Like the lighter weight roundhouses, this might suggest that the structure was reinforced using the woven basket technique. It was located fairly close to Roundhouse 7, so it's just possible that it may have been some kind of associated outbuilding. This was one of two large ring ditches excavated on site along with a nearby four-post structure. It measured just over 6 metres by just over 2 metres and had a depth of just under half a metre. The conventional interpretation is that this was part of a roundhouse and would presumably have had a ring of posts which had subsequently been truncated out. There was a cluster of post holes identified at the southern end of this feature, but these were more reminiscent of a four-poster than a post ring. Excavations at Kintore identified three types of ring ditch house. Those with the post ring external to the ring ditch, those with the post ring internal to the ring ditch, and those with no evidence of either an internal or external post ring. So both of the large ring ditches at Loak Farm fall into the latter category. There's been a lot of discussion about the purpose of the ring ditch. Interpretations range from it having been formed by having overwintered cattle tethered in one location through to a form of mini souterrain used for storage. Questions have been raised as to the need to overwinter cattle indoors, but the warmth that they generated would have been of benefit to the human occupants. So they may have simply been brought in for the night and released during the day. So a deeper hollow, either worn or deliberately dug round the periphery of the internal living space, would have helped to contain urine and fecal matter, which could then have been mucked out during the day when the animals were outside. It's also possible that they simply acted as a drainage feature. Deeper examples would not only have kept the interior of the roundhouse drier, but may also have drawn water away from the ground set structural elements such as posts, thus extending their lifespan. The fill of this ring ditch contained a high percentage of stone, a feature which is broadly paralleled at other sites such as Dryburn Bridge and Douglasmuir, where the base of the ditches were paved with slabs. The benefit of either lining the ditch with slabs or filling it with stone would have been that it would act as a soakaway, while still hopefully providing a usable space above the level of the escaping water. Considered in terms of a storage feature, the depth of this feature would perhaps make it feasible, possibly for the storage of surplus grain. It might also be worth considering if ring ditch with no evidence of a post ring may have been storage features in their own right. This possibility was mooted for a number of ditch features at Deladies, which the excavator tentatively suggested may have been a local form of souterrain. Some of these features had post holes around them, suggesting that they may have been roofed. There was no real evidence of this at Loak Farm, but the possible four-post structure at the southern end, along with the nearby four-post structure, might suggest that this was an area allocated for the storage of grain. This was one of several large groups. Sorry, this was one of several groups of large pits identified within the area. The largest of these was close to 4 meters in diameter and nearly 1.5 meters deep. The two northwesterlymost pits had what were interpreted as post holes cut into the base of them. So this would suggest very large timber uprights. Their purpose is uncertain, possibly ritual, and maybe something along the lines of a totem pole. There was no evidence of a post pipe, suggesting that if it did hold a timber upright, it had been removed prior to the pit being backfilled. It's also probable that at least some of the pits identified were for storage purposes. Experiments carried out at Butser Farm suggested that the bulk storage of grain in pits would have been feasible if the right anaerobic conditions were created. These experiments suggested beehive pits worked best, with a narrow entrance widening out below ground level, much along the same principle as a bell pit. But the unstable sands and gravels at Loak, compared with the chalk at Butser, would have made this impractical to achieve. So this perhaps would have meant that more of the stored grain would have been wasted. These are two 6-post structures which were identified within close proximity to Roundhouse 5, so probably associated. They measured 3.5 by just under 4 meters and 3.5 by 3.5 meters. Again, these are generally thought to be for grain storage and are probably larger versions of the 4-post structures. And also in close proximity to Roundhouse 5, there was a small lightweight structure defined by 7 post holes. It measured 3.2 by 2.8 meters. Its purpose is unclear, possibly a small stockade for animals or some other kind of outbuilding. This one shows more 4-post structures and reflects what appears to be a recurring theme across the site, which is the capacity to store grain. Distribution maps have shown that 4-posters are most prevalent in central southern Britain, with outliers extending into the more fertile regions of southern and eastern Scotland. South of the border, there's been sites identified with over 100 four-post structures, and it's been suggested that the large-scale storage of grain relates to communal feasting during the Iron Age. It's been hypothesized that features such as four-posters and grain storage pits gradually died out in the later Iron Age, as surpluses were traded for prestige Romanized goods such as wine and figs. Whether the apparent level of grain storage at Loak Farm could be attributed to feasting is open to debate. But what with the four-posters, the six-posters, the possible storage pits, and perhaps even the ring ditches, this would suggest a thriving agricultural community with the ability to produce and store a large surplus of grain.